Ever since the dawn of cinema, certain movies have been no stranger to using gimmicks to get audiences to come to the theater. Whether it was exploitation, 3D, or Percepto, there were no shortage of ways that directors would try to use novel concepts to sell their movies. Heck, even the likes of sound and color movies were initially seen as gimmicks before they proved to be way bigger than that. But one of the most infamous examples of a movie trying to sell itself on a novel idea is the 1938 Western The Terror of Tiny Town, which contains a cast consisting exclusively of people with dwarfism. And today, I'd like to go over this movie to demonstrate how novelty shouldn't be used when trying to sell a movie. And there will be spoilers ahead, so in case for some reason you'd like to see this and don't want to know what happens, you should probably come back to this video another day. Okay, so The Terror of Tiny Town was conceived after an employee made a joke that with the state of the economy, the studios would soon be forced to hire shorter actors in order to cut costs. And realizing that such an idea had never been done before, and thus would be able to sell itself to audiences on its premise alone, Jed Buell of Poverty Studio Spectrum Pictures commissioned a movie to be made consisting entirely of short people. So a typical Western script of the era was drawn up, with the plot centering around two feuding families and an evil outlaw who takes advantage of the feud to get away with his schemes, only for things to go awry when two members of the feuding families fall in love. But audiences didn't really go and see it for the plot, but rather for the novelty of seeing a Western populated entirely with those who had dwarfism. And to the movie's credit, it ended up making a ton of money at the box office. But on the flip side, the final product is also considered one of the worst movies ever made. And one of the biggest reasons for that is because most of the actors didn't sell their parts very well. Really, pretty much the only two actors that do a reasonably good job in their roles is Billy Curtis, who plays the hero, and Little Billy Rhodes, who plays the villain. But other than them, it almost feels as if most of the characters are being played by actual children, and thus most of the acting is pretty awful. Though the extremely generic story doesn't do the actors any favors either, as it's pretty hard to follow, completely convoluted, and riddled with plot holes. And not to mention, it's also not all that nice to the short actors either. Because the whole selling point behind the movie is seeing a bunch of little people in a town built for regular-sized people. And as a result, it often feels as if it's making fun of them, seeing as how they have to climb on shelves to look out windows, ride on ponies instead of horses, and barely have to open the swinging doors of a saloon to enter the building. So it almost feels like the intention is to laugh at them instead of with them, which only makes a movie with a bad script and bad acting even harder to sit through. In fact, Billy Curtis, who went on to have a long and respected career as one of Hollywood's best short actors, even once commented on the double standard behind The Terror of Tiny Town, saying, quote, "We were all directed like we were children. Small, in the minds of stupid people, is kiddie stuff. So first they try to exploit little people. Then they patronize you. And when the picture comes out, then the audience laughs at you. Why? Not because we were low budget, because most Westerns then were Bs. Because we rode ponies. What would a person my size ride? A stallion? I played the good guy who put the bad guy behind bars at the end, just like John Wayne. and I kissed the pretty girl, just like he did. So what the heck is so funny? And it's honestly kind of funny how well Curtis sums up everything wrong with the movie here. Because most of the cast were treated like children, they ended up giving performances similar to children, as I noted before. And as for why audiences laughed at the movie instead of taking it seriously, it's all in the way their dwarfism is portrayed. Because sure, if you're going to have a movie populated entirely by little people and then make everything to their scale, then there's really no point in doing it since most would hardly notice the height difference. But they didn't have to play their dwarfism for cynical laughs either, because whether it was intentional or not, that's how it ends up coming across. And that's why the audience laughed. Because when John Wayne comes riding in on his horse, he's usually presented with all the gravitas his character deserves. When Billy Curtis comes riding in on his pony in this movie, however, it's all played for laughs from the get-go, and nobody is treating it with much respect. And as a result of the way the actors are framed, it made the audience compelled to laugh at what they were seeing rather than treat it like a typical Western. Because simply put, if the exact same script had been made with no alterations to it, but was made with regular-sized actors, the audience would have probably hated it and would have flopped. The only reason audiences were interested at all is because it was a movie starring exclusively little people, and those behind it knew it. So rather than try and give them the respect they deserved, they instead embraced the novelty angle full throttle and played their short stature for laughs, knowing that the audience would respond more to that. And while it may have made them a ton of money in their day, the results most definitely do not hold up, because its belittling of the actors for cheap laughs is extremely obvious. And simply put, that is not how a movie should use novelty as a way to sell tickets. When a gimmick comes at people's expense and demeans them, it is most definitely doing it wrong. Because simply put, a good movie that relies on novelty has to be good even beyond the gimmick that they're using to sell it. It should have a good story and characters to back up the novel idea, not use it as a crutch and be the entire reason behind it. And something like Who Framed Roger Rabbit only proves this, because while the blending of live action and 2D characters is the main selling point, and does it really well, it can also stand on its own merits without it. And moreover, it treats that novelty with extreme respect and never once makes the traditionally animated characters out to be inferior to the live action ones. That's how to use novelty in a good way, and The Terror of Tiny Town does pretty much the exact opposite. But I already got into Who Framed Roger Rabbit in a separate video, which you can find a link in the description to if you're more interested in me talking about gimmicks done right. But the point here is that there's a reason The Terror of Tiny Town is considered one of the worst movies ever made, because it gets everything wrong and only managed to make back its budget through its novelty exclusively. But as I already pointed out, over time this has come back to bite the movie's reputation in the butt, as not only is it made pretty badly, but the actor's shortness being constantly played for laughs only comes across as demeaning and disrespectful nowadays. Which is a shame, considering it still stands to this day as the only movie to ever have a cast consisting exclusively of those with dwarfism. But other than that distinction, the only reason it's still known at all is because of how bad it actually is. And we're not talking bad in the traditional sense here. This movie is such a unique brand of awful that it has to be seen to be believed, to the point that no description I could ever give would do it justice. Which only further cements the Terror of Tiny Town status as perhaps the textbook example of a movie gimmick gone completely wrong. Okay, I think I've made my point here. So now I'd like to hear what you guys think. Do you believe that the Terror of Tiny Town should have never been made and perfectly encapsulates everything that can go wrong with movie gimmicks? Or do you think I'm being too hard on it? Please feel free to let me know in the comments. And please keep in mind that any and all opinions expressed in this video are merely that, opinions, and you don't have to agree with any of them if you don't want to. If you think I couldn't have been any more wrong about this whole topic, that is absolutely fine. And thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate all of it, and I hope to see you all next time.